Welcome to the Sound of Movement podcast. Today we're talking about a pretty hot topic, which is it's all around designing better programs and should women train differently to men? This is something that we get asked a lot, and it is definitely a good question. You want to make sure you're training the right way, but the answer might not be what you think.
Welcome to the podcast tribe. Good morning to everybody in Australia. Good afternoon and evening to everyone else around the world. We're excited about this one. This discussion is very much fitting into our series this week, but it actually comes off the back of a question from one of our online coaching members yesterday, and I just couldn't resist. I was commenting in the thread in our private Facebook group, and I just thought, we can make a podcast about this because it's such a great question, and it's going to share insight that everybody can learn from. Male, female, doesn't matter what level of conditioning or physical preparedness your body's at right now, you will get something out of this discussion. I'm super excited about it. Before we get started, big shout out to everyone joining us on the podcast, and a very special welcome to everyone joining us on YouTube, on the YouTube channel. We're super excited because we have just employed another videographer who's going to be editing these and getting them up much quicker. So we're going to catch up. We've been a little bit behind on getting the podcast up on YouTube. Smash that like button if you're happy with that. And it also means we're going to start producing weekly workouts again in the new year. We're very excited about that too. And also leave a comment. The question of the day, do you think women should train differently to men, and why? We want to know. I want to get your feedback. I want to start a discussion on this topic because it's a really important topic. So Richard, maybe you could type that in the question of the day. Okay. Most importantly, we want to give a huge shout out and warm welcome to everyone joining us live in the UMS Movement Mastermind Facebook group. If you haven't already and you're on the podcast or on YouTube or anywhere else reading the email, jump over and join that group. It's a fantastic group. Good morning, Christy. She's jumped in and said hello. Let us know where you're tuning in from if you're on the group, in the group watching live. How are you, Rad?
I'm good. Very good.
How are you, Richie?
Very good as well, Yanni. Thank you.
Awesome. Now, this is a topic that we're going to share a couple of stories and a little bit of insight. We'll start off with our personal stuff. Rad's going to share a story of a discussion he had just today with one of our members at the gym. And essentially, it's going to build a little bit of context around where we're going to go today. First and foremost, I want to share the fact that when you're training, male or female, genetics plays a huge role, of course. Everyone knows that. Certain people have just a better mechanics and naturally better leverage in the body, and that tends to be that the origin insertion of muscle is slightly wider on a joint, which gives it a more stronger action when you contract that muscle, and those variables change a little bit from person to person. And then the muscle fiber makeup, some people are just gifted at being explosively strong and others are more geared to endurance and things like that. But if we push all that aside, the thing that matters the most is your history, what you've done in the past, what you did growing up as a child. You know, if you grew up climbing trees and running around and riding BMX push bikes and being really physically active as a child, then you are going to naturally carry those traits over into adulthood. And if you continue to do those things, you develop into an athlete, potentially you take up a really, really competitive sport. For Rad and myself, it was martial arts and boxing and rugby league and soccer. I know that Richard played a bit of soccer, and then the boys were in the army and the military as infantry soldiers, training extremely hard. And then they migrated to gym, and we opened a gym, and we really got heavily into strength training, flexibility training, and then later on in life, calisthenics. So, the three of us, when you guys watch us on YouTube and you watch us on Instagram and you watch us in the gym and on the podcast, you're seeing three guys who have essentially been physically active our entire lives. Most of our families are overweight. I can't speak 100% for Richard, but I have heard him speak about the fact that the majority of his family members are fairly overweight. My family has battled with weight a lot. Rad and mine, you would be surprised to know that both our parents are overweight. My dad's a lot healthier these days, but he suffers like pretty bad diabetes and all sorts of stuff. My
mum's even healthier these days. But
yeah, that's
still,
right. But they're
they're
still very overweight, and so we certainly have bucked the trend in that regard because of our sporting, our physical exercise, our training, and the fact that we've built a lifestyle around our training. Now, I say this because I really want people to understand that when they watch us do things, they are comparing themselves, and if they compare themselves to us, they're comparing themselves to people who have been physically active our entire lives, okay? Yep. Now, that plays a huge role in how quickly you adapt to new stimulus, okay?
Yeah.
And just before you jump in, on that though, there are physical limitations to our bodies. Rad and I both, although we're brothers, have very different physical bodies. Rad has a long torso and shorter legs. I have long legs and a shorter torso. And if you look at us side by side, although we're almost identical heights, maybe half an inch or an inch difference.
No, it's about a centimetre.
It's about a centimetre difference. It's not a lot,
Less than half
We're
an inch,
both just over 6
inch.
foot.
Yeah.
6 foot, 6'1" or something.
No, I'm 5'11", and you'd be right on 6 foot.
Yeah, I'm around 6 foot, just over 6 foot, yeah. So it's an inch, yeah. But our hips are about 3 inches different in height, okay? And that in itself creates a huge difference in the way our bodies function in certain movements. In addition to that, our arm length is very different. My limbs are longer than Rad's. My arms are longer than Rad's, and it just makes the mechanics of movement very different. And that means that he excels in certain movements that I suck at naturally, and I have to work extremely hard to keep up with him. And vice versa, I excel at movements that he's not so good at, and he has to work harder than I do to level the playing field. And that's going to be the same with everybody. So the notion that you can compare yourself to the way someone else functions and performs is really a flawed concept. It doesn't work. And I say this with all due respect. It is very healthy to compete. And I believe it's actually a great thing. It motivates. It ignites that fire. But there are limitations to how much you should try to compete with other people, because there are just certain things that people are going to be naturally better at because of their body, because of their mechanics. Yep. And then on the flip side, you got to add the fact of your history and your current physical preparedness, and it becomes quite difficult to create a medium of expectation that everyone should perform the same at things like the pull-up and things like that. So that's how I wanted to start that discussion. Rad, I know you.
Well, no, look, I just want to stay on topic with what we've talked about, with what we've introduced here. So let's read out Rachel's question, and then we'll get into it. So Rachel has said, Rad and Yanni, would you consider creating a supplementary course for women to get... Now, Rachel's part of our UMS Online Coaching group. Would you consider creating a supplementary course for women to get strength for the upper body, chin-ups, rings, pikes, etc.? You guys naturally have more strength. I know you're going to say it's all in the foundation program, but I reckon it would be helpful to have a specialised program for it. And Yanni's response was, I'm curious, why do women need a different program to develop strength? And Rachel has given a really nice, well thought out, well articulated, I should say, answer here, where she's basically saying, I just would find it helpful to have something that helps for weaknesses. She's saying, I know your program is brilliant and I love you guys. You're the best online coaches I've found, but I still find that some upper body strength movements I plateau on, like the pull-ups, and I'm still stuck on the basic version. Perhaps I'm not pushing myself hard enough. She's saying, I'm really determined to improve my... I'm skipping through this because it's a long response. I'm so determined to improve my performance and do calisthenics, but it's a long journey for me. And then Becca Perry has jumped in and said, hey, Rachel, I remember feeling the same way while I was doing foundations. I've been at it since September 2019. So she's been with us for over a year now. And now she can do 2 to 3 pull-ups, 4 to 5 push-ups, and a 10-second tucked L-sit from parallel bars. Those 3 in particular took a long time for her, much more than the 18-week foundations program. Hang in there, you have lady support on here. And then we've also got, who else has jumped in? Grace Clements has also said, that she's had massive progress with the foundations. Jada has also jumped in and said, I've done the foundations and seen fantastic results. And then we've had a bunch of our tribe jump in and give Rachel some very specific coaching, which, if you don't know why, this is the value of the UMS Online Coaching Group. You get specific coaching for your questions, which would honestly take a whole show to read out all the different comments that she's got. But what we want to talk about, and what it all falls into the category of, it's not a matter of having a specific program that's created for you. It's just understanding how to apply the lessons that we are actually teaching over and over and over and over and over again. If you listen to our shows regularly, you will hear us say the same things over and over again, like a broken record. And I want to just quickly talk about something that I said to some of our members this morning. What some of our members were asking me, how do I get over this problem? And I basically gave them the answer. And I said, but what you've got to understand is the answer that I've just given you is not what's going to get you there. It's your understanding to block out all of the other shit that you're going to expose yourself to over the next week or two. You're going to watch some YouTube videos. You're going to watch more of our YouTube videos. You're going to hear me talking about how to fix somebody else's issue that you think you need to fix as well. And what you've got to do is you've got to identify the thing that you want to see the biggest results in. Identify what the process is that's going to get you there. And then you need to work on that and block out everything else. So what does that look like? For example, the guys this morning were talking about, how do I fix my tight shoulders? I've been working on it for 6 months and I still haven't seen the results that I want. I've made some improvement, but it's not there. And my answer to them was, stay back for 15 minutes after class and do specific shoulder flexibility work. And there was a bunch of things that I told them how to do that I won't go into on the show. But what the hard part is to identify the plan and stick to it no matter what. Not to go after a month, which is what everybody does, go, oh shit, I haven't done this for a month, I better start doing that. Because all that does is just makes minor improvements in all these different areas, where the big wins come from if you double down on something, make massive improvements in it, and you turn that weakness into a strength. And once that weakness becomes a strength, you don't need to focus on it all the time. It's just the nature of doing a balanced program like the UMS that will keep that balance there for you, and then you get to move on to the next weakness or the next imbalance. And this is where so many people go wrong. They think that what they need is like what Rachel's saying is, can you make a specific program for women? That's not the answer. Women don't need a specific program. What you need to understand is the process. And for example, the foundations program, for some people, like the pull-up if you can't do a pull-up and you've never done upper body strength training before, and not even if you did it 10 years ago, like consistently, like when Yanni said, if you're looking at Rad and me, as in looking at Yanni and me, you're looking at two people, or Richard, that have been training consistently for their entire lives since they were teenagers. Consistently. So we're not elite level athletes. Like I would not try to compete with an elite level athlete. But you know what? If we trained with them, we'd look like we're keeping up with them. We can have a go with them. Put us on the competitive field, and the difference between being able to run a 10.5 second 100 meters or an 11 second 100 meters versus a sub 10, they're going to annihilate us. But we can train with them. We can have some fun with them, and we can keep up with them. So you got to think, like, if you haven't done that, if that's not you and you're trying to build strength that you've never had before, it is going to take time. And I've got some more that I want to say about this, but I'm going to let Yanni, have a little jump in and have something to say his 2 cents.
Well, yeah, look, I want to just address the gender specific question here, like very, very clearly, and our opinions on it as well, because it is a question that comes up a fair bit, and I even remember being taught this back in school. When you're doing anatomy and human movement and learning to become a personal trainer, and it came up a lot. And in the old days, they used to suggest training women slightly differently, not because of the fact that they lack strength inherently, because there was this fear of women getting actually strong and developing muscle.
And it also comes from if you took 1,000 people,
you just cut me off so badly.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. I really want to put this point across. We were even taught as strength coaches and personal trainers. This is going back 20 years almost, or 17 years, to give different rep ranges for females.
That's what I was going to say.
Not because they respond differently to the stimulus, simply because it wasn't trendy to make a woman strong like a man, to make a woman physically as capable as a man. I'm not bullshitting you. This was in the literature. You know, men should be doing maximal strength at around the 5 to 7 rep range, or 1 to 5 rep range, and muscular hypertrophy around 8 to 12. Don't do that for women though, because they might, God forbid, build a bit of muscle, and so therefore we should be prescribing rep ranges of 12 to 15 for women. You know, because somehow that's going to stop them from building muscle, which is, we now know, is total bullshit. But this is a stigma, a dogma, a belief system that has been plaguing the world, society, for a long time. And that in and of itself, and I'm getting a little bit political here, that in and of itself has held women back and created this belief that they need to be treated differently. But the reality is, and the question comes up a lot around nutrition, and people know that I'm a proponent of intermittent fasting, and every time I do a course or a presentation to a group of people, there's always a few questions from women saying, but how does it affect women? And the reality is there is no scientific literature that supports the fact that it affects women any differently. You know, and I've asked some of the best PhD nutritional scientists that question, and they say the same thing. Well, there's really no literature that supports that notion. It doesn't affect women any differently, and nutrition doesn't affect women any differently. You know, women have different hormonal profiles than men. We know that, but that doesn't mean nutrition affects them differently. You know, and the same goes for exercise, in my opinion. And I'm pretty sure this is shared across the. I mean, what you got to understand is women hypertrophy at different rates to men because they have a different starting point in most cases.
That's right.
They have less muscle mass to start with, so the process is slower. It's like getting two people to run 100 meters, but one of them gets a 20-meter head start. Of course, the person with a 20-meter head start is going to outperform the person if they're both at the same level.
It's also testosterone. Men have more testosterone, but that doesn't mean that you train differently. Women still have testosterone in their system. So I remember, I asked, Yanni and I are blessed that because we've been in this industry for so long, and because we were so determined to be good coaches and to be able to give good advice to people and not go off the bro science, that when we found people that really knew what they were talking about, we latched onto them and we created good friends. And early on in our career, we were blessed enough to be connected with somebody named Tony Battaji, who now holds a PhD in metabolic research, and I'm pretty sure a master's degree in nutrition, or a degree in nutrition at least. And then on top of all of that, you got to understand, so those are what his credentials are. But because he's got a PhD and he understands how to really read research papers, not just the excerpts, not just the summaries of them or the conclusions, he can read the papers. He reads about 20 peer-reviewed research papers a week, and he's been doing that for well over a decade. So he's really up to date with the current research, and his whole business is based around, his value promise is objective, evidence-based techniques only. He doesn't go off subjective stuff. So, and I remember asking him, again, lucky enough to have an open line of communication because he's a friend of ours, and I reached out to him one day when one of my clients was saying, I'm going through menopause, what do I do differently? And I said to him, how do you train women differently than men? And he said, all of the research suggests that the only thing you have to consider, now tune into this, women, is that the only thing that's really different about women is when they go through menopause. And when they go through menopause, they become more insulin resistant. So that it means that you have to start looking at the ways that you deal with insulin resistance, which is the way that the body reacts to carbohydrate, and the way that you have to, start to modify the macronutrients that you have so that you don't put on too much, you don't store too much in your fat. And that's a whole nother story to go through, which we're not going to go through today. But that's the only thing you really need to consider when training women differently. So What I want to talk about now is to go deeper into this discussion, which is I'm not progressing, what do I get better? It's not that you need a special program, it's that you need to understand how you progress. And let's talk about the pull-up, because the pull-up is something that a lot of people struggle with. In the UMS Foundations program, we have some really, really good progressions for the pull-up, which is we start with the feet-assisted pull-up, then we go to the eccentric pull-up, and then we go to the pull-up. But within each of those progressions, there is a lot to understand. It's not as simple as, like, for example, in the Foundations program, we go from an incline dumbbell bench press or a high incline to a low incline to a flat. Anybody can do that. Nothing's going to stop you from being able to go from that to that, or from a 45-degree incline bicep curl to a 60-degree incline bicep curl. There's nothing that's going to stop you being able to do that. But going from a feet-assisted pull-up to an eccentric pull-up to a pull-up, there's a hell of a lot that's going to stop you from being able to do that, and that is the inability to go to the next rep, because you're talking about calisthenics here. So you got to understand, what are you trying to do? Why would you be getting blocked? And there's one thing that you can always control yourself, and that is the quality of your movement. You are in control of controlling the quality, and the way that you do that is that you manipulate the intensity to make sure that the quality is always high. So when you do a feet-assisted pull-up, I don't think there's anybody on the planet that won't be able to do a feet-assisted pull-up with two fingers on one hand. And you know why? Because you use as much of your feet as you want to. So you stand up as much as you need to. So you understand what the goal of a feet-assisted pull-up is. The goal of a feet-assisted pull-up is to just learn to depress your shoulders and pull your chest to the bar at the top and feel a sensation of the muscles that control those movements. Just feel some form of a sensation. Once you can get that, then you move to an eccentric pull-up. And then the eccentric pull-up, you have to be able to do 3-second eccentric contraction for 3 reps where your shoulders remain depressed. If you can't do that, you go back to the feet-assisted pull-up and you do a little bit more work on that there. But for the average person, if you understand this and you apply yourself, film yourself, ask the questions, you should be able to do that within 4 to 6 weeks. You should be able to, it's just creating a neural pathway that wasn't there before, and it doesn't take as long as what people think. And then with the eccentric pull-ups, you manipulate the volume so that what you do, you manipulate the variables, which is the time of the eccentric contraction, so working from a 3-second eccentric contraction up to an 8-second eccentric contraction, working with how many reps you do, so starting from 3 reps, working up to 5 reps, and working with how much rest you have between the reps. Now, these are all things that you can manipulate and control, but this is where people get it wrong. They don't record their progress and they don't have a plan. So if you come in, failing to plan is planning to fail. And if you come into a workout just saying, I'm going to do eccentric reps and I'm just going to do it, that is not how you get better. What you've got to do is measure what you can currently do. And let's say you can do the absolute bare minimum. You can only do 3 reps of a 3-second contraction. So what you do is you work on doing your sets of 3 reps of 3-second contraction with the goal to get up to 3 reps of 4-second eccentric contraction. And once you can do that, the next goal is to do 3 reps of 5-second eccentric contraction. And then when you can do that, the next goal is to do 4 reps of, and there's so on and so forth. But every single workout has the goal of achieving or going better to the next thing. It is not just work until you can't do it anymore. And then within those parameters, you always maintain high quality. You do not do reps with low quality. And if you can't do reps with high quality, this is why we have an online coaching group. You film yourself and you ask, what do I need to work on? And then you get coaches like us having a look at it and telling you how to progress. And that's where the value of coaching comes from. So it's not about how do I make a special program. It's about how do you understand how to use a really good program and continue to make progress. And I guarantee you, Rachel, if you watch this, what we've just said here, over and over again until it sinks in, and then start asking some different questions and film yourself, because you didn't post a video with your question. Film yourself, post a video so that we can look at it, and we'll give you some really good feedback, and you will eventually, in less time than what you think, you will get a pull-up.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other thing is that you've just got to be patient and practice some faith.
Yeah.
You have to, it is very, very difficult to, and I want to reiterate this again, it is very, very difficult to come from a benchmark where you haven't done a lot of strength training in the past and then become proficient in really difficult movements in a matter of months. It just doesn't usually work that way. And if you have a very specific movement that you want to learn, like the chin up, then the only way you will do it is to do an enormous amount of volume under the right protocols to get that. And you can. I believe anybody can go from not being able to do a pull-up to being able to do a pull-up in 12 weeks. But you'll be needing to do pull-ups more than twice a week.
Yeah, you'll
probably be doing 4 or 5 times a week of pull-ups.
Yep.
And then you've got to control other variables and manage load so that you don't end up with overuse injuries in the elbows and forearms, so that you have to understand very, very astutely load management principles, so that every time you do those 4 or 5 sessions of pull-ups every week, you're not doing them maximally. You're not taking yourself to absolute failure. You're not burning out your gripping muscles every day, but you're just banking reps and building that neural pathway. And you can absolutely do that. But I dare say that then, unlocking the pull-up and only unlocking the pull-up is going to leave a lot of opportunity on the table that you've completely neglected, and in and of itself create imbalances in the body that then you'll have to learn to overcome later on down the track. So I don't suggest that you take the quickest route to doing a movement like that, because the quickest route is not always the best long-term strategy. It never is, really. It's rewarding to unlock the movement quicker, but then you play catch up on everything else later on down the track, and it can lead to injury. It's very, very common, So I say just be patient. Just be patient. Follow the process. Keep working hard. It is hard work, and you've got to make sure that you're getting all the other little things right, getting the nutrition right, so that you're fueling your body. One of the biggest breakthroughs for me in my physical training was learning that the exercise is only the stimulus. The nutrition and the recovery is the catalyst. So if you're not banking enough sleep at night and you're not eating enough dietary protein to suffice, you will not adapt properly. It's just as simple as that. Yeah. The exercise is a stimulus to the body, but the catalyst that creates the adaptation is what you do after the exercise to furnish it, to support it, to complement it. And so. Those are the other things that you need to be thinking about. If you're really, really wanting to make huge strides in your strength development, then ask yourself, am I getting enough sleep to support the amount of training I'm doing? Yeah. Am I eating right to support the amount of training I'm doing? Yeah,
I think I've got 2 things that I want to say here. Number one is that I have a coach myself. I work with somebody online who is considerably better than I am, because I have goals to go well beyond where I am now. And it doesn't matter at what level you're at. If you want to really see progress, you need to work with a coach. It is essential. I've never been able to break through any plateaus of anything that I've tried to do. And I do an obscene amount of research, and I'm a trainer. And it's always when I work with a coach that I go through and start being able to do something that I could never do before. So you have to get that right. But Rachel, you've nailed that one. But to add on to what Yanni just said about getting everything right with your rest and recovery and your nutrition and everything, you've got to understand that what you've said, that you want to be able to do calisthenics, that is like the pinnacle of training. Calisthenics it's so impressive. It's so much fun. I love doing it. I love the journey. For me, it's what motivates me to be able to train is movement style training and calisthenics. But you've got to understand how demanding it is on your body. It is very tough to do. And, depending on where you're starting, for some people it's, several months before they'll see any progress with calisthenics. And for some people, it can be years, and that's why the UMS is designed in a way like people come to us to Unity Gym and they say, I came to you because I saw that you guys do calisthenics online. And then their first several months, they're barely doing calisthenics except for the pull-up. It's all weightlifting and strength training. But very, very quickly they realize why we do it like that, because they can see how weak they are compared to our other members. And calisthenics is a really, really good goal. It's a good goalpost to have, but it requires some serious adaptation in the body if you're not already strong and if you don't already have some good muscle. And I found this out the hard way. I found it out the hard way because I had a history of martial arts and my upper body was very weak when I decided I wanted to learn calisthenics. And I got quite frustrated with how hard it was for me to get better. And then I got really frustrated with putting in a lot of work, a lot of effort, 5 to 6 days a week of training, 2 to 3 hours a day, and then showing Richard and Yanni, after years of trying, some of the things that I was working on, and they could both just do it better than me. Because while I'd been doing over a decade of martial arts that did virtually zero upper body strength training, Yanni and Richard had both done over a decade of strength training, doing traditional weightlifting, and they were just so much stronger than me. So that's why we have this whole process in the UMS where it starts with the foundations, where, you know, Rachel, I think that maybe when you look at foundations, phase 1 is feet assisted pull-ups, then phase 2 is eccentric pull-ups, then phase 3 is the pull-up, and you look at that and you get to phase 2 and you think, well, I'm not even close to doing an eccentric pull-up. You got to understand, it's not this is what happens to everybody. We've just shown, like, it would be a pretty demotivating program if I said foundations phase 1 is feet assisted pull-ups, and phase 2 is more feet assisted pull-ups, and then phase 3 is a bit more feet assisted pull-ups. Like, that doesn't look very good for somebody that is already almost at being able to do a pull-up. Like, people need to be able to see what is laid out in front of them to get there. But not everybody progresses in everything in every program. And the further you get with the UMS or with any good program, the more you'll realize that some things you just go forward on every program and other things you don't. Other things is like a zigzag. You go forward and back. You stay at the one spot. You're having to manipulate the volume that you're doing to be able to get better. You know, it's how it is.
Look, I want to say something that Rad hasn't said here, and I think this might come as quite a shock to a lot of people in our program and everyone else in the world. The Foundations program is training to get ready to train. It's not actually it's not design. It's a general preparation phase program. It is preparing you for the harder training to come. Yeah. And then from there, we still focus on developing strength, flexibility, and fitness as a foundation. The Foundations program is called the Foundations program, but it is a general preparations program. It is designed to prepare you for hard training so that your load tolerances are raised, so that your body is more balanced, it's more symmetrical, the joint integrity is increased. You know, it is all about preparing you for real hard training. And then from there, you still have to build a baseline of strength, like maximize your strength. And I believe that realistically takes another 6 months on top of the Foundations program, and then you're ready to sort of go deploy that into these advanced calisthenics skills, you know. To think that you can come out of a 3-phase general preparations program and excel at calisthenics is ridiculous. Yeah, it is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, if you want to know how much work calisthenics takes, watch Fitness FAQs, Daniel Vadnal's 10-year journey video he posted about 6 months ago. Yeah, it is brilliant. Yeah. He put it together whilst he was in lockdown, and this is one of the guys who I believe is up there in Australia as one of the best calisthenics expressions of calisthenics strength that I've ever seen. Oh, for sure. He's one of the most well-rounded general populations I've ever seen. He's not an elite level athlete. He's a physiotherapist by trade, but he is an absolute beast when it comes to physique, training, everything. He came from a bodybuilding background, like an amateur bodybuilding background. He was right into his bodybuilding. Yeah, really? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it was all body weight stuff. Yeah, he's one of the. I'm wrong. But what he talks about is in the first 4 years, all he did was basically push-ups and pull-ups. Yeah, he didn't really know much better, and he just did the rawest, most basic strength stuff. You know. Yeah. Anyway, look, watch that because he's worked so hard, and lately he was so stoked to unlock a 5-second planche. Yeah. It's like a 10-year journey. Yep. And it's brilliant because he's documented the entire thing, unlike another person in Australia I really like watching is Simon Ater, and he is an absolute beast, but I haven't seen his journey documented, so I don't know what he was like before he started. I do know that I watched a video where Daniel was interviewing him about 3 years ago, and back then he said that he'd been training for 15 years, so now it'd be getting close to 20 years. What's the name of the film? I'll see if I can dig it up and link it in here. We're talking about Daniel's 10-year
Oh, it's not a film.
It's
Just
not
go,
a film,
just go to Fitness FAQ's YouTube channel. So Fitness FAQs, and just in the search bar on YouTube on your desktop, you can search within a channel. You can search YouTube, or you can search within a channel when you're on the channel. When you're on the channel, just type in 10-year transformation in the search bar. And
I will say that both these guys were due to come up. They were meant to be on the podcast at the start of the year. They were coming to Unity to do a bunch of workshops and train with us.
They were coming to Unity the Saturday after the country went into lockdown on Monday.
Yeah.
And I was so devastated because I was looking
paid
forward.
for flights and accommodation.
Man, I was
organised
so keen to
dinners
get
and
those
booked
guys in here.
restaurants, and we're devastated, and they were devastated too, because it really they were in the epicenter of where shit got really bad here in Australia, in Melbourne, and so yeah, anyway, we will... Yeah, look, guys, let's bring this in for a landing. We're going to wrap this series up tomorrow by really going deeper into how we do these things in the Unified Movement System and here at Unity Gym. And I really hope you got something out of this discussion today. Gender definitely alters the journey for a lot of people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you should alter the programming. The way that you develop maximal strength in the gym is there's best practices and programming formulas, and of course on an individual level, if you want to develop a certain skill, you can double down, and you should double down on that skill, but try not to do it at the expense of everything else, because you can create issues in the body quite easily by doing so. When you run towards something, you always run away from something else. And I hope you guys have got a little bit of motivation out of that. It is all of our own journey. We're all on our own little path, and what we really recommend you do is just set some benchmarks, retest those benchmarks over and over again, so that it's you versus you. You're on a path to really leveling up yourself, your ability, and you're not comparing yourself to other people. We're going to go deep into that tomorrow. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.